right, everybody, we'll begin the meeting shortly. I'd like to welcome everyone. I'm President Evelyn Garcia Morales, and I call this regular board meeting of May 18th to order. The time is 5:01 p.m. I'd like to remind everyone to please silence your electronic devices. We'd like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather today is a territorial homelands of the Nuwu, the Muwapa Band of Paiutes, and the Las Vegas Band of Paiutes. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, led by Trustee Bustamante Adams. The presentation of colors will be led by the Clark County High School, ROTC, Cadet Petty Officer, 3rd Class Pedro Lund, Cadet Petty Officer, 3rd Class Jacob Romero, Cadet Chief Petty Officer Marilyn Cruz, Cadet Petty Officer, Second Class Ashley Salazar, Douglas Webster, Master Gunnery Sergeant, United States Marine Corps, retired instructor. Trustee Bustamante Adams. Please have a seat. Trustee Zamora will make a motion to approve the agenda. Before I turn on microphones, I'd like to acknowledge that Council Malich is on the phone. Council? You verify that?
Yes, that's,
Okay.
I'm here.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, Trustee Zamora?
Madam President, members of the board, I would like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Zamora. Trustee Williams?
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Zamora, second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move on to the consent agenda. Before I completely open the consent agenda, if anybody would like to speak during this portion of the agenda and has not yet submitted a public speaker card, it's a yellow card on the podium, please do so now. Otherwise, once we begin, we will no longer accept public speaker cards. Okay. We have one individual who's signed up in advance. Mr. Bayless?
How you guys doing today?
Welcome.
James Bayless for the record, Dr. Jara, ladies of the board. So I mainly just came in to speak on 219. I guess you guys are going to be hiring a bunch of people to go after social media peoples. I just think before you guys do this and make yourself look like a fool, you might be aware that the Supreme Court just passed a ruling today that actually prevents 219 from even happening. You guys might want to look into that before you make yourself look dumb. You guys have a good day.
Do we have any other public comment? Okay. Very good. We will move on. Colleagues, I'm looking for a motion at this time. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion to pass the consent agenda as presented.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Brooks?
I'd like to second.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman and a second by Trustee Brooks. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. That motion passes 7-0. Trustee Bustamante Adams will read the warrants at this time.
Thank you, Madam President. Ratified warrants as listed in the bills payable transmittal and board memorandum number 19-22-23 in the total amount of $17,757,162.45.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Great. We're going to now move on to item 3.01. That's the public hearing of the 2023-24 tentative budget. This is the time and place that was advertised for the public hearing on the tentative budget per the Nevada statutes, Nevada revised statute 354.596, and interested persons shall be given an opportunity to be heard concerning the 2023-2024 tentative budget of the Clark County School District. At this time, if individuals who would like to speak on this item would like to submit public comment cards, you can do so now. Otherwise, once we begin this item, we will no longer accept public comment cards. Okay. I think we go straight into the presentation. Yep. Dr. Jara? Okay. Mr. Gowdy, welcome.
Thank you, Madam President. Jason Gowdy for the board, or Jason Gowdy for the record. Members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Today is going to be a very brief presentation of the 23-24 final budget due to the fact that we are in a legislative session and virtually nothing concrete has changed since the submission of the tentative budget approximately 45 days ago. And so we are going to skip a few slides to save everybody time. Nothing has changed. So here was what we talked about last time, which is a summary of available resources. This projected an increase in adjusted base funding of $397 million was based off the governor's recommended budget. Subsequent to that, and actually subsequent to that, as well as subsequent to us preparing these materials, Economic Forum met and released new numbers which showed an increase in the projected revenues for the state of Nevada. Then additionally, since then, the legislative process has allowed the legislators to have a proposed budget in excess of what the governor's budget for K-12 education was. That essentially resulted in around $95 million of incremental funding that if the legislative proposed budget passes would be in excess of the prior numbers that we provided here for the governor's proposed budget. The only caveat to that is currently there are a number of bills in process that have very significant unfunded mandates for the Clark County School District and could dramatically decrease the availability of those funds for operations and bargaining if many or some of those unfunded mandates are passed through. The next slide that's different is really just a very brief update on employee contract status. We have begun negotiations with our bargaining units, and at the time of this report, the number was $312 million, so that's what reads that. But even at the $405-ish million or $406 million, the comments are still accurate. And so the current projection of funding available for negotiations and operational initiatives based off the governor's proposed budget at the time is subject to legislative approval. Even the legislator's proposed budget is subject to legislative approval. So the initial proposals that we have received from bargaining units related to compensation would far exceed the available funds noted above, and if accepted, the district would be put into a deficit. Additionally, due to the deficit, not only would the district be unable to address any of the other priorities identified by the community, significant cuts would need to be made to balance the budget as required by law. The district cannot utilize one-time state funding initiatives, federal ESSER funds, CCSD ending fund balances, or any other non-recurring funding sources to fund recurring compensation costs. Now, as mentioned earlier, the legislature is not bound by the governor's proposed budget and has the authority to propose increased funding for K-12 education during the legislative session, as they have done so. That is the conclusion of the updated presentation for where we were from tentative budget to final budget, and I will open it up to any questions.
I have a technical question. I technically have not closed the public hearing, so I want to, colleagues, is it okay if we hear from the public comment so that we can close the public hearing and then on 3.01 specifically? And we have one person who signed up in advance for 3.01. Autumn Tampa, you here? So with that in mind, and we don't have any yellow cards on 3.01. The public hearing is now closed, and now we are officially moving on to 3.02. All right, colleagues, I see some members of the queue. This is the time for us to begin our discussion. Trustee Guzman?
Do you want to let Dr. Jara go first?
Sure. Dr. Jara?
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board, trustees. As our CFO presented and shared, our changes basically with the increased funding, I also want to reiterate some of the conversations from our community. And one of the priorities that the community had obviously was employee compensation. So when we look at what the community and this board has prioritized, this budget presentation aligns with that. The second priority for us would be obviously our facilities, some of our deferred maintenance, and then obviously my biggest concern, our biggest concern is mental health support that we continue to hear. We heard from our children, our kids in our superintendent's advisory. We heard it loud and clear from the community, and it's constant. That is all funded currently. The big majority is through ESSER and the CLIF. But when you look at this budget, we have enough, and the priority obviously is our employees. But I just wanted to note to the board that there are some other priorities that have yet to be for us to allocate funding because of our employees' needs, which we all agree as a whole. So,
Thank you, Dr. Jara. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. Mr. Gowdy, thank you for presenting this. I'm pretty concerned after hearing what Dr. Jara just said about what our community wants. And you mentioned that there are bills with unfunded mandates and that they would affect this budget. And I specifically want to ask, because I've been watching the legislature, and I specifically want to ask if you have the numbers on those bills that provide those unfunded mandates so that our community can know what is actually happening and why some of their priorities may not be seen because we have these unfunded mandates coming down the pike.
Thank you, Trustee. Jason Gowdy for the record. Yes, so I've got the few listed here which directly impact Clark County School District, and I'm not going to go through all of them. What I'll do is I'll go through some of the larger ones and the estimated fiscal impact or fiscal note that was created as from at least the district as it relates to those bills. The first would be SB 340, which is essentially required summer school. And the estimated cost of that is around $60 million based off of the prior 2 years that we've done it, that we utilize ESSER funds in order to pay for that. The next component that's larger is AB 428, and that's the teacher pathway programs at all high schools. And that would require us to hire a new teacher in every high school to cover that, as well as provide some training and et cetera, which is estimated about $4.1 million. The next large one is AB 282, and this would require the school district to pay $450 in subsidy for each substitute that meets certain criteria for health insurance. And that estimate is around $6.7 million. There's also some additional required mental health and SEL training in SB 313, which is right around $2.6 million. And then there's a number of other ones that are in the million-ish dollar range, but then the next one that's somewhat larger than that is that AB 410, which relates to stress-related insurance claims, which could cost the district in excess of $2 million. AB 301, which is the school police heart and lung coverage, estimated at around $2 million. SB 434, which would provide PERS as a retirement to substitute at 720 hours of work, which is right around 101 days at their 7 hours a day. And that is still very early, but we estimate that could cost the district as much as $5 million a year. And I do want to also bring up, as it relates to that under the state law related to PERS, the employee is required to cover half that cost. So approximately 16.5% of whatever substitutes are making now would be taken out of their paycheck, and they would get 16.5% less than what they're getting now. And then we as a district would have to put 16.5% on top of that in order to cover that. The next one is AB 301, and it revises the definition of a police officer. That could cost us up to $4.1 million. And then SB 158, and that is the requirement to have certain cameras in special education classrooms. That could cost us $42.6 million. That one could potentially be handled under capital and our bond funds rather than operations, but as you're aware, we've got a $6 billion deficit in need in our bond funds as well, and that would take away some of the projects that we have slated to address those needs. Those are the larger ones that we have right now. I believe the only other one that is large is SB 282. This is related to the 5% limit on carry forward for local school precincts. AB 400 is the governor's large bill, which has similar language in it. And if you took away, or if you limited every school right now at 5% and then sent the remainder back to the state, that would cost the district around $134 million. Now that's sitting in reserves and carryover, so it doesn't take away our operating funds for the current year, but it certainly takes away our reserves in order to accommodate a number of the programs that we've implemented with ESSER funds that would later be required to be utilized through our operating funds. I hope that addresses your question.
It does. So taking all of that into account, that would affect negotiations, it would affect providing mental health programs. What would that look like? Like if, and not all of these will pass, but if the majority of these pass, what would that look like?
So Jason Getty for the record. As I mentioned during the last presentation, we had $312 million available of excess funding for operations as well as for negotiations. That number with the additional 95 has gone up, just about $406 million, $405 million. And that's available. So if these are unfunded mandates mandated by law, that comes out of that number first.
Okay.
And so that one affects the amount of monies we'd have available to bargain with our full-time employees, as well as other programs that we're looking at initiating through the community input, which the community felt were, as well as what the board feels, are important to support our students and our employees. So all of the above would be affected.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, are there any other questions at this time? Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. Mr. Gowdy, I wanted to ask about the average daily enrollment. So what did we base that off of? And then my other question has to do with the Commission on School Funding. Where are they in their process of meeting and updating their information?
Jason Gowdy for the record. So the first question on our average daily enrollment, we have a demographics department that essentially looks at an immense amount of data, including construction, birth rates, the different laws, transiency in and out of the district, and they go through and they essentially provide us, meaning the budget and finance team, their estimate of what they believe the enrollment is going to be throughout the year. I don't know the most recent numbers for accuracy, but this came up a lot during the first few years I was here, and it's within 0.5% accuracy in totality. Getting it accurate on a school-by-school basis is significantly more challenging, but they are still very, very accurate. Some of the things that have affected it more recently was the change in birth date related to when you start kindergarten. That was something that was hard to anticipate. It confused people, so there could have been people that actually could have applied because of the exemptions that did not. And so that did cause probably the largest discrepancy that I've seen in accuracy since then, which would be, I would consider, completely out of their control, but that's where we get that number. The second is on the Commission of School Funding. I know there were some bills that I don't know the actual status of them, to essentially allow the commission to start meeting again and meet on a full-time basis. Currently, the law prevented us from meeting during the legislative session components. However, the commission gets a lot of questions from the legislator during the legislative process. And so I do know that Chair Guy Hobbs was recently reappointed. I have to go back. I am not 100% sure whether I have technically been reappointed, but I am required under the law, meaning the CCSD or the two largest school districts, their CFOs must be on that commission. And there's two other CFOs from the rurals, and then we have one right now from the charters.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. I'll jump in if it's okay, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Gowdy, for this update and for providing additional context to help us with this presentation. I just want to make sure that I'm, for the record, want to indicate how grateful I am to the legislature and the governor for the historic investment and resources and additional funding that will help us continue to invest in our workforce and our students. Ultimately, there is a lot of great need, and grateful that they have are utilizing the resources that we have in the state to invest in our education system. Now, from what I'm hearing us talk about, the $406 million that's estimated, give or take a little or less, hopefully maybe a little more than less, but $406 million that's coming to us, that there is a tremendous need that exists. And from one, there are two things that are kind of competing interests. One, I hear the unfunded mandates that are currently have not been decided on just yet, but by the end of the legislative session, we will know if the legislature chooses to move forward and essentially asks us to use, informally asks us to use the resources that they just invested to help fund the items that they push, that they pass, excuse me. That is a possibility. That's a competing interest, and then which far exceeds the resources that we actually are receiving, in addition to the bargaining, the negotiations, right? The conversations with the educators, the licensed professionals union, the support professionals union, all the unions that we have, all 5 unions that we have at the school district that we work with to help represent our staff. I'm hearing you say from those conversations that their asks, the requests that they have far exceed the $406 million. So we have, on one hand, the needs that our staff have brought to us, and on the other hand, we have 3 competing interests. The legislature is one of them, and the unfunded mandates that may be coming to us, the resources that our staff have asked for us, they are very deserving of all those resources, and in addition to the operational cost of the district to help us continue to offer one-on-one technology support, provide mental health services for our students, provide updated curriculum and materials, building support. It sounds like, I want to be clear that there are almost 3 lanes kind of crashing into each other here with that want these resources and are deserving of these resources, and we have to, at the end of the day, we'll have to make some really hard decisions about where that funding will be allocated to. Is that what I hear us saying? Yes. Okay. well, thank you for that information. I mean, it is worth celebrating, certainly, that we are receiving a historic funding, and at the same time, a grave responsibility to determine how these resources will be utilized to help us maximize our impact ultimately on students. Trustee Zamora, I see you in the queue.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. You brought up two things that made me think of something. I'm wondering if, because there's just two things happening when it comes to the funding, I'm wondering if we can be very intentional of having community conversations to kind of explain how it's going to work, because I think about that it's been 5 years since the marijuana bill, and folks still don't understand how that works, right? So maybe being intentional about having those conversations and explaining and possibly even doing scenarios maybe, or just what ifs kind of conversations.
Thank you for that question, Trustee Zamora. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Jara.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. Trustee Zamora is a great question, and I think the education piece would be a tremendous benefit for the community as we go through the process, because that's what we learn, who's responsible. And I think right now, when we look at as Trustee Guzman mentioned, on the unfunded mandates, that if they pass, we have to comply. That takes away from the total pot of dollars that we have available. So we can, talk to the president and try to set something up. I mean, the time is running short. Legislative session's over soon, and our families are going to start going on break and different things. So we can go back and if the board president, we can have the conversation and set some times for community discussions, but absolutely good idea.
Thank you. Thank you for that, Dr. Jara. Colleagues, if there are no more, let's see, Trustee Bustamante Adams, it seems like you are on.
Thank you, Madam President. I just had two more. Mr. Gowdy, in the presentation, it talks about the governor's new definition for at-risk. Can you share what that means? And then also in the presentation under uncertainties, you talk about potential continuation of ESRA funds. What are your thoughts on that? Is that a conversation at the federal level? If you could share.
Thank you, Jason Gowdy for the record. So the first piece is, to be clear, it wasn't a change in the governor's definition, it was a change in the state's definition. So the State Board of Education adopted a new definition of at-risk, which essentially has moved to those students at risk of not graduating with their cohort. It is a significantly better definition of at-risk than the previous definition, which was really free and reduced lunch. So what they said was, if you're free and reduced lunch, you're at risk and you're all the same. This new process means that those at risk of not graduating with their cohort, there is analytics that can be derived from data throughout the nation about what types of factors contribute negatively towards students not graduating. It includes income, it includes households, it includes how many times you move, it includes grades, it includes attendance. The presentation, the Commission on School Funding, I believe there was north of well over 100 different attributes that go into this score, and is based off of millions of points of data over many years to show that these are the criteria and these have the risk factors that show when kids don't graduate. So now the definition is that the 20th lowest quartile is how they will fund at risk. That's how they define it at the state level. They then will send whatever that allocation for CCSD is to us, and then we will allocate to those schools who have the highest or the lowest quartile. And we haven't determined exactly how that's done yet, because if you utilize just pure grad score, because elementary school students are so far away from graduation, by natural calculation, they're significantly lower. So we're going to work internally on how we do that, and then truly provide funds to those schools that have students of the most need. Additionally, what I think is the most important piece of this is that under free and reduced lunch, we cannot provide those names to the principals. They have no idea. I'm sure they have an idea, but they have no concrete proof of who they are and how to really provide services. This will provide the information, and it'll actually show the risk factors as to why the grad score is low, because if it's absenteeism, that is a different program than maybe having English as a second language or having a homelessness issue, right? So this becomes a really valuable tool for the the principals. And I have been on the commission and been in full support of this since day one. Continue to be. Mr. Greg Manzi, who runs our research group right now, he is in full support of it. I've asked him. They've looked at this, and many of the things that they've developed over time, this is starting to line up with what they thought risk was. So it's great. So that's the first piece. ESSER continuation. There are a number of programs that we believe are going to be significantly beneficial to students. Social emotional learning programs, attendance programs, and things of that nature, which we're going through with ESSER dollars right now, and then understanding how important those pieces are, and then having to figure out how we're going to deploy our resources in the future, or which resources, in order to maintain those programs that are beneficial. The other piece that Dr. Jara mentioned earlier, or maybe it was a trustee, I don't remember, apologize, was related to our one-to-one device ratios. So that costs us anywhere between 60 at a minimum and $100 million a year in operational costs to buy the Chromebooks, to employ the additional people that are required. There's also an additional $25 billion that's in capital related to all of the wide area networks that need to be updated on a regular basis. We've learned, through remote and all the other pieces, the importance of one-to-one devices, especially from an equity perspective. And that's one of the areas that concerns me the most, because we don't have many options in not doing that, and we don't have many options in funding it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Okay, colleagues, at this time, if there are no other questions, we will love to continue and seeking let's do public comment first before we seek a motion. I have two people who've signed up in advance for this item, Autumn Tampa and James Bayless. I don't believe Autumn is here. Mr. Bayless, can you come up, please?
Hi, James Bayless for the record. Always a pleasure, Dr. Jara. Mr. Gowdy, always awesome to listen to you. So as far as his budget, the man always does impeccable work. You can't really deny that fact. So as far as the budget and the truancy thing, I was just curious, as far as the money and stuff, that sounds good, but we also need to maybe think of the people within the programs per se, because the attendance program and the truancy program, I've reached out to that whole program for my son's situation and got crickets. So maybe we do need to throw more funding at it, but also we need more people in there. And maybe more qualified people would be awesome. So we probably need a bigger budget to get the better PhDs in here. But as far as Mr. Gowdy, he always does a great job on all his presentations. And as far as the budget factors and truancy, I understand where a lot of situations and a lot of things happen. But one of the problems may not be a homeless problem, may not be a food problem. It could be those robocalls calling people and telling people the wrong information problem. That could be a serious problem. I know a lot of parents within our district is dealing with, because their kid will be at school and they'll get called saying they missed a class when the kid swears up and down he didn't miss that class, but the robocall says he did. So, and I know that's a fact for my son's situation because he was upstairs playing PlayStation when I got the robocalls. So I know he definitely wasn't in school. So situation is you guys are doing an awesome job in a lot of situations, and a lot of situations I understand you guys deal with. And Mr. Gowdy, you're an awesome man. You keep up a good job, man.
Thank you, Mr. Bayless. All right, colleagues, at this time, I don't have any more public comments and any more colleagues in the queue looking for a motion. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I would like to approve the adoption of the 2023-2024 final budget and provide authorization for members of the Board of School Trustees to file as required by Nevada Revised Statute 354.598.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks. Trustee Cavazos?
Thank you, Madam President, and I will second Trustee Brooks's motion.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Cavazos. Please cast your vote. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Mr. Gowdy. Colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.03, the Clark County School District Disparity Study presentation. This is not an action item. This presentation and discussion on the disparity study of the Clark County School District by Keene Independent Research, LLC, Public Consulting Group. We'll allow the individuals who will be presenting the moment to settle in. Welcome. I'll turn it over to Dr. Jara. Dr. Jara?
Yes, Madam President, members of the board, I just want to do a quick intro for the team. If I may, if you recall, I believe 18 months, this was a request of the board to go back and look at the disparity study and the concern. I think Trustee Brooks brought this along as a request, as a formal request. The board entirely voted for it. They saw the need as we were looking at our procurement processes. So what you're going to hear is a look under the hood, if you will, to see where we have gaps, and we have a lot of opportunities. So, you know, as the president, have had conversations about different things that, you know, we get a baseline and then, you know, come back in a year or two or three to see the gains. But this is it's always tough looking under the hood and having other outside parties look, because they would be more critical and objective, but gives us a great opportunity for growth. So I just appreciate the leadership of the board in requesting of this information.
Thank you, Dr. Jara. This is tremendous. Looking forward to the presentation. Mr. Casey, welcome.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Mike Casey for the record. Joining me this evening are Mark Campbell, Interim Chief of Facilities, Steve Staggs, Director of Purchasing, Joseph Broad with Keene Independent, and Manuel Perez with Keene Independent. As Superintendent Jara had mentioned, CCSD engaged Keene Independent about a year ago to conduct the disparity study pertaining to our procurement practices. While purchasing's primary focus is to generate the greatest value for dollars spent, as evaluated by both cost and quality of service and/or product, the department also places great emphasis on providing equitable access to the local business community as governed by Regulation 3312. This is also evidenced by the number of outreach efforts the district currently has in place. The district does advertise its RFPs through multiple channels, namely DemandStar, Nevada Government e-Marketplace, and on Bonfire. We also host 8 supplier open houses annually, which are geared towards local and DBE businesses. We participate in supplier outreach events conducted by other entities, including Clark County, the City of Las Vegas, various chambers of commerce, and the Institute of Supply Management, and the Regional Business Development Advisory Council. Additionally, we partner with the Governor's Office of Economic Development. We are an active member of the Regional Business Development Advisory Council, and we participate in the U.S. Small Business Administration Emerging Leaders Program. In monitoring our efforts in this regard, CCSD does compare favorably relative to other school districts, averaging about 3 to 5 points favorably relative to the median. With that said, we know this is not a clear picture of performance, as marketplace conditions do vary by region. Therefore, we believed it necessary to conduct the full disparity study to determine if amplified efforts were indeed needed. So with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Joseph Broad to present the study and discuss the findings and recommendations.
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, it's an honor and a pleasure to be here to present to you the results of the 2023 Clark County School District Disparity Study. My name is Joseph Broad. I'm a senior consultant with Keene Independent Research.
And my name is Manuel Perez, and I'm a consultant with Keene Independent Research.
We're going to present to you today a summary of a much richer, more detailed report which has been provided to the district. We're going to go over the study team, introduce you to some of our members who are crucial to the study. We'll go over the study methodology, and then get into some of the results and the recommendations.
We'd like to start off by presenting the disparity study team. So our firm, Keen Independent Research, also known as Keen, is a 26-person economic consulting firm. We have extensive experience conducting disparity studies. Up to date, we've completed more than 200 related studies, and our methodology has been tested in court previously, which adds to the strength of our work. As part of the disparity study team, we also had a sub-consultant team. We had Erika Aviles Consulting, Las Vegas-based consulting firm, who assisted us with the outreach and in-depth interviews of firms and other stakeholders in the local market area, as well as Southwest Marketing and Consulting, another Las Vegas-based consulting firm. Helping us with the legal framework, we had Holland & Knight, an Atlanta-based firm, and helping us conduct our availability survey was Customer Research International, also known as CRI.
Each of these members of our team was crucial in order to meet the strict scrutiny standards set by the Supreme Court. So the Croson decision, a Supreme Court decision, it set the standard for what needs to be done in order to provide a rational basis for implementing a race or gender-conscious program using public dollars. So you can see the elements of these of the study listed on the right, and so, excuse me, sorry. The team was crucial in making sure that we met all of those study elements. Our study methodology has also been court tested and approved in the Ninth Circuit Court. Some of these elements include things like determining the relevant geographic market area. So the first thing that we looked at was we collected contract data from the school district. Those were prime contracts. We also worked with the school district, who was phenomenal in helping us reach out to prime contractors in order to get them to voluntarily submit subcontract data, which the district does not currently track. With the contract data and subcontract data, we looked at where the firms were located, the firms that you were doing business with. And we determined that the relevant geographic market area for the study would be Clark County. The lion's share of district dollars went to businesses that were located within Clark County. So we collected thousands of district contracts and subcontracts, and then analyzed each of the vendors that was participating in district contracts. So we determined their race, ethnicity, and gender in order to classify them as MBE, WBE. We also determined the type of work that was being performed on each contract. And with that, we were able to determine the utilization of minority and women-owned businesses in terms of a dollar share of district dollars.
After we were able to collect that prime contract and subcontract information, we were able to launch a availability survey, and that survey went out to thousands of firms in the southern Nevada area, and we were able to identify a couple of things. First was the firms that were wanting to do work with the district, as well as those that were qualified to do work with the district. And we determined several characteristics such as bid capacity and what their experiences were like within the local marketplace. In addition to the availability survey, we also collected a lot of anecdotal information, and this was done through in-depth interviews, focus groups, and other outreach with more than 170 business owners and other stakeholders in the local community. Some of the things that we found from that information was that there were evidence of barriers for minority business enterprises and women business enterprises. Some of these things include difficulties building relationships with customers and prime contractors, having access to capital and funding, running into good old boy and other close networks which make it difficult to get into a market, negative stereotypes and double standards, amongst others. And as you can see in this slide, this is an example of one of the barriers that minority business enterprises and women business enterprises are running into, which is difficulties with lines of credit or loans. As we can see, a higher portion of MBEs and WBEs compared to majority-owned firms are reporting these types of issues. And this is only one example from a whole series of examples that are presented further in the report.
And for clarification, the majority-owned term is a term of art that refers to white male-owned businesses. Through the availability analysis, through the availability survey that Mr. Perez just explained, we were able to determine the number of businesses and the portion of businesses who were minority or woman-owned by calling thousands of businesses in the area, asking them for their interest in performing work with the district, and getting some information about the type of work that they are able to perform, the size of the contracts that they're able to perform. And with that information, we produced an availability measure, availability benchmark. Now, looking at just the head count of firms who were available for district work, about 40% are minority or woman-owned. On this figure, on the screen, we are seeing that MBE, WBE availability is 27%. The reason for the difference between 40 and 27 is because not all minority and woman-owned businesses are equally available for every type of work. We have a very sophisticated methodology where we are able to match up the types of firms that are available for different types of work to different types of contracts. And that way we're able to get as close as possible to an apples-to-apples comparison between the utilization of minority-owned businesses and the availability of those businesses to do the specific types of work that the district has been purchasing over the last 5 years. So the way that we do that is we go contract by contract. We determine the type of work of that contract, determine the size of that contract, and then we refer to our availability database where we find the businesses who said they were interested in district work, so they perform that type of work, and that they are capable of performing that size of that contract. And summing those results for each contract and each subcontract, we end up with an overall result of 27.1%. And this is a bit higher than the about 20% MBE WBE utilization. Now, in the next slide, we're going to go into a little more detail regarding construction contracts. So here we're splitting up construction prime contracts in the middle panel and construction subcontracts in the right panel. As you can see, the dark purple bar showing about 24% utilization by the district for construction prime contracts. That's a little under, but about on par with minority and women-owned availability for construction prime contracts by the district. However, there's a larger gap between the utilization and availability of MBE WBEs on construction subcontracts. And we believe that this is the kind of evidence that courts would look for when the district is using evidence for a rational basis to develop a race and gender conscious program. If we look at even more detail on subcontracts, we can see the disparity index for each group. The disparity index is a comparison between the utilization of minority and women-owned firms and the availability of those firms. So that's simply the utilization divided by the availability times 100 to put it on a nice scale. Here we're seeing across the board on construction subcontracts that there are what are called substantial disparities for minority and women-owned firms. The courts have used disparity indices below 80 as evidence of discrimination in the market. I wanted to note here that as of now, the district has little to no control over the subcontracts that prime contracts award as part of their work. But with Keen Independence recommendations, the board may be able to adopt policy and build a program that places some requirements on prime contractors to reach out to more minority, women-owned firms, other disadvantaged businesses for opportunities to participate on district contracts. So here and in the report, in more detail in the report, we have laid out some recommendations and what the timeline to implementation of a program may look like. One thing we'd like to emphasize is that building a program like this it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a flip of the switch. It takes time to build, and it takes some investment by the board in order to make it a successful program. In the first few months, it may require action by the board to change policy, to adopt a policy to authorize such a program. In the following months, the board will need to, the district will need to develop staff, build their data tracking systems, and take other measures to ensure that the program is going to be successful. To ensure fairness in these opportunities on these large public works contracts, for example, district staff will need to first, for each contract, identify areas for subcontracting opportunities. And that may be a sophisticated approach that is going to require staff time. It's also going to require that that the district has the staff who are available to prime contractors, to subcontractors, to be able to navigate this program. So we believe that around year 2, you may be able to start implementing the program and evaluating the results of the program. It's going to take some time to mature. As you know, a lot of these public works projects are quite large and may move somewhat slowly. So you may not see really the impact of the program until years after implementation. But we recommend that there be a sunset clause so that the program is actually designed to end at some point, unless you perform another disparity study about 5 years after implementation to determine whether the program is still necessary to help the district toward parity, that is, equality between utilization and availability of minority and women-owned businesses. And again, I wanted to highlight that this is just a summary of a rich and detailed report. And at this point, I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much for the presentation. Trustee Williams?
Are we doing comments first? Public comment? Oh, because it's not an action item. Got it. My bad. All right.
Good job.
Thanks. Thank you, gentlemen. I only have a couple questions. I don't know what slide it was. I think it was your second or third slide. Well, yeah, go next. With your firms, your teams that you contracted out, do you guys keep these people on retainer? So these are firms that you consistently work with over and over and over again, or are these firms that you guys pulled directly for the study?
Thank you for the question, Joseph Broad for the record. Holland and Knight and Customer Research International have been part of our study team for years. We frequently do business with them on disparity studies. But for each study, we try to involve local business to the greatest extent possible. So we had 2 sub-consultants who are local to the Clark County area, who were integral in the communications piece of this study, as well as in-depth interviews with businesses from Clark County.
Okay, thank you. And then just a couple questions, I'm sorry. You talked about stereotypes and double standards. I am no stranger to the good old boy system. I've been in the military for 16 years. It's very prevalent. But can you give me an example of a double standard that you would see during a study like this?
I'm happy to. Again, Joseph Broad for the record. It's really common in disparity studies like this, and I'm certain that there's an example like this in our report, in our qualitative appendix, of double standards where there are instances where minority and women-owned businesses are assumed to be incapable of performing the work that they are capable of doing. That is that they're assigned to do a job, they do a job frequently, but they are never quite held up to the same standard as their majority-owned counterparts, that there is a bias, a prejudice that it favors majority-owned firms, that they are capable, that they are qualified, that many minority and women-owned businesses do not experience. They do not often experience the predisposition from others, from peers in the market, that they are qualified to do a job.
Okay, thank you. And then When you talked about the study that you did, you went through 5 years of contracts. You said you've gone through thousands. I'm not going to ask you for the exact number because I'm sure it's, I don't know, probably 5,000 or 6,000, somewhere around there, if not more. But did you also go through with the business owners or firms, whatever term you'd like to use? The way I wrote it, I said, did you look at the comparison from when the companies were formed to when the bids went out and their capacity and their capability at the time?
Joseph Broad for the record. Yes, that is one thing that we included in our weighted availability analysis. So in compiling the availability benchmark, the year established was also one consideration that we made when matching up the contract to the availability database.
Okay.
So if a contract was awarded after, before the business was formed, then that business was not available for that contract, was not included in those calculations.
Right. Yeah, that was my concern. If you were to call businesses that are obviously capable now, but 2 years ago they weren't around, that would be like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I like this study. I don't think it's wrong to have studies like this. I think it's good to look at these things because it's just a part of our reality and our everyday. My concern is that, as with everything else, is that the more time that this board puts into studies like this, when this is purely operational, this could purely go down the facilities operational planning portion. The board itself doesn't have to be a part of this. We should be made aware of it, but it shouldn't be us, because every single time we do something like this, it takes our focus off of our students, and every time our community is made aware that the board is involved of something like this, we get petitioned as a board to consistently focus on something like this when this is not our role. Our role is students, our role is policies for students, and this is why we have our facilities managers up here, and this is why we have our superintendent. So those are just my comments. Those are my thought processes, but either way, thank you for doing the study and thank you for being here.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Trustee Guzman?
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I appreciate it. Thank you for this study. My questions probably go to Mr. Campbell and Mr. Lamb because of the Bond Oversight Committee that I used to sit on. They asked for this study, and I'm wondering if they have been briefed on what the percentages and things are, if they have been informed on this disparity study.
Thank you for the question, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara. Mark Campbell for the record. Trustee Guzman, and I would like to introduce Justin Lamb, our Director of Construction, was able to join us for the meeting tonight. So one or both of us will answer some of these questions. But having just held the Bond Oversight Committee meeting in this room earlier today, we sped through that meeting so that everybody could be ready to watch tonight. So many of them are probably watching this meeting right now. And several of them expressed to me this morning that they had already looked at some of the results in the presentation as well as the report. So you're right. For that committee, they've been speaking about this type of engagement, outreach, things like that for a number of years, and I think for them this would be a step. But I think they will be looking to go further into this over, as we talked about, months and years.
Thank you. And then also in your pathways forward, and maybe Mr. Campbell, you can help me with this. They mentioned that we need to adopt better policies. And so what would that look like?
Joseph Broad for the record.
Thank you.
To clarify, I wouldn't state it as better policies, but you need an authorizing policy just to say that the district can implement a program. So it's not that the policy is lacking anything or is insufficient, but there is this piece that the district can do to add to its existing policy to say that procurement can implement this program. And that might look like, it may not have to be too complex in the policy itself. It's possible that the district may instead implement a policy that gives a lot of leeway to its procurement department. But It's going to take some development over the next several months in order to ensure that all of the elements that are included in that policy and in that program are supported by the results of the report that we've provided for you.
And do you have examples of where those policies exist now within districts? The size of ours?
Yeah, Joseph brought for the record. So we've completed over 200 of these disparity studies, and those are often followed up with a program implementation. It's very, very rare that a municipality or school district does not follow up by implementing a program, but we have performed these studies for school districts in the past, and they have implemented these programs.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Dr. Jara, would you like to weigh in?
I do. Thank you, Madam President, members of the board. I appreciate the insight. I can tell you, Trustee Guzman, in the previous life that I was at in Orange County Public Schools, we had a policy that was, and this was kind of the impetus of some of this conversation, because we had a policy for procurement processes, and this was the first step for us in order to create a policy. When we started doing the research, we had to have a disparity study to then drive the policy. So this would be the first step, and the, I would tell you, the superintendent, and I appreciate Trustee Williams' comments, it is operational. So one of the first steps is for us to bring a policy for this board, and then for them to manage the program.
Great, thank you so much for that, Dr. Jara. Trustee Bustamante Adams.
Thank you, Madam President. So in your comments, you said that CCSD compares favorably to other school districts, but it's probably not a great comparison, I think that you said, because they're not doing so well. And so if we're at the top of something so we would compare ourselves to other programs like MGM Mirage's supplier diversity. That's what I think your recommendation is. So if you could verify that. Number two, the opportunities seem to be in the subcontractor level, right? Because in order to be a prime, you've got to have huge access to capital and your ability to bond. So, but one of the barriers is that our business owners don't have a relationship with the prime, and I think I heard you say, Mr. Casey, we don't track subcontractor data. So I wanted to verify that. And then number three, the question that I have is, you said that the lion's share of business owners are from Clark County. So that means out-of-state contractors. What's the breakdown? 70-30? What does that look like?
Joseph Broad for the record. I'll start with your third question and then work back and hope that I can remember your first and second.
I wrote them down just in case. I'm ready.
So the relevant geographic market area is going to be defined by the area that it makes up at least 75% of the district's dollars. In this case, I believe that the figure was around 90%. It was substantially higher than 75%. And this is after excluding what are called national exclusions and other types of purchases that may not be relevant for a race gender conscious program, such as transit vehicle manufacturers. So there were several purchases of school buses by the district by transit vehicle manufacturers, and so they were excluded from the study. There are some other types of purchases that were purchased nationally where there's just no local competition. You're not going to find a certain competition for certain software packages, for example, and those were excluded from the study as irrelevant to a contract equity goals program. And I'm afraid I did not meet my goal of recalling your first and second question.
I'm sorry to go so fast. So you said that we compare favorably to other school districts, but that's not a good benchmark for us. I think that's what you said. Is that accurate?
Madam President, Superintendent, Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Bustamante Adams. That was actually my comment in terms of looking at the school districts. That's based on the Council of Great City Schools reporting. So relative to other districts, we are favorable in that regard. The actual statement was it's not a clear picture of performance given the variability from region to region. So it's the metric that we look at in terms of how we compare to other districts, but certainly needed to have the overall comprehensive disparity study to determine our utilization versus availability.
Got it. And I know my last question had to do with the subcontractor level, but I know that's where the opportunity is, and we don't have the mechanism or the policy yet. But I wanted to talk about page 11, and you were talking about your WBEs. So just in that, just for my edification, so if I'm a Hispanic business owner, then I would be in the MBE category and not the WBE category. Is that correct?
Yes, Joseph Broad for the record. Thank you for the opportunity to clarify that. The way that these categories are compiled is that if you are a member of a racial or ethnic minority, then you appear under that category, that racial ethnic category. The WBE category is strictly white women. And we recognize the importance of intersectionality, that of course if women face prejudice, if minorities face prejudice, then it's doubly so for minority women. The reason for classifying businesses this way is strictly for data purposes. It's that once we start looking at minority-owned, women-owned, the data begin to be very small, and with that, higher uncertainty.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Bustamante Adams. Trustee Cavazos.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you to my colleagues for getting a lot of my questions answered already. I just wanted to ask, I really like your methodology that you utilized, to come up with these conclusions and recommendations. I wanted to ask about the 170 business owners and others, and if you could just elaborate a little bit on how those were chosen and who are the others.
Yes, Joseph Broad for the record. So we have comments from 170 businesses, trade associations, business organizations, and others. These came from surveys. When we do our availability survey and we're collecting information about the types of work that businesses perform, the size of contracts that businesses are able to perform, and we collect information about their experiences in the marketplace, we also give them an opportunity to share any additional thoughts with the district. And that's their opportunity to express anything that they weren't able to express through our survey. In addition to that, we ask businesses if they'd like to participate in a follow-up interview. And these are lengthier. They can go up to an hour, maybe possibly more, where we're really asking some deeper questions, some probing questions, getting at their experiences in the marketplace. So these may be with business owners, trade organizations, business associations, but it may also be with individuals. There are some cases where businesses might have closed down, and we are speaking with former owners of a business, for one example.
Thank you so much for that. I appreciate that. And it appears that, with those focus groups and who you were talking to and the others, that there was, again, a wide diversity of the folks that you were talking to. I just had one other quick question. And under the slide, we had your conclusions and your recommendations. And, I really I appreciate you coming out and just saying, this is not something that's going to happen overnight, right? It's just something that's going to take some work. So with your experience with other districts, hopefully maybe by our same demographics, has that timeline run into any specific barriers, like commonalities, any problems? Because I really like the timeline, especially on the monitoring, the tracking, and the sunset and evaluation. So just wondering, if you'd run into some real roadblocks with this type of plan.
Thank you for the question. Joseph Broad for the record. In my experience, I haven't run into any issues. I haven't spoken with any past clients who have run into any sort of roadblocks or barriers, aside from I'm sure what the district may deal with on a day-to-day basis. So I'm afraid I can't guide you any further there than what we have in the report.
Okay, thank you so much. So then now, I wasn't going to pick on any of our staff here, but would anybody on our staff, could you anticipate anything on this? Because I myself really like this plan. I think it's a really good plan. So could you anticipate anything that might be an issue?
Madam President, members of the board, Superintendent Jara, Trustee Cavazos, this is Mark Campbell for the record. I think, you know, we're looking at experts that have been in the field, and you know, it's been a long process to go through this. I think the guiding, the overall challenge that we may face would be more legislative in nature. All of our purchasing processes are governed by the state law, and so we did the disparity study to assist in working within the means of that law, or those laws. But we will need to spend some time throughout this timeline to verify that the things that we're doing are acceptable in the state.
I just want to say thank you for that, and very good point that you brought up. Thank you again for this presentation. And I wanted to thank, this was something that had been kind of like rolling around for a while on the board, going back a few years, and I wanted to thank Trustee Brooks for bringing up the request. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank you for your time. I greatly appreciate it. I'm pretty sure this is the first time that we've done this, and it's been a long time coming. We definitely have people come and testify sometimes to tell us there are disparities, and to have it mapped out where they are is valuable. I'm looking forward to moving forward, and definitely recognize that procurement is not my job, but I'm definitely interested in exploring a policy that solidifies our like that this is a worthy investment for us. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, colleagues, for that fruitful discussion and questions, and thank you, gentlemen, for your time today. I think this is not an action item, and we're going to just thank you for your time and dismiss you so that we can keep going through the agenda.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, colleagues, we're going to move on to item 3.04. This is an action item. 3.04 is a reappointment of 2 members to the Nevada Interscholastic Activities Association Board of Control, or NIAA. Before I continue with this item, if anyone who would like to speak on it has not had a moment to submit their public speaker card, please do so now. Okay. I don't see anybody who has signed up in advance, and I do not have any yellow cards at this time. Trustee Brooks?
Thank you, Madam President. Seeing no one else in the queue, I would like to make a motion to approve item 3.04.
Thank you, Trustee Brooks, for that motion. Trustee Guzman?
I'd like to second.
Excellent. Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Brooks and a second by Trustee Guzman. Please cast your vote. Colleagues, that motion passes 7-0. Thank you for your service, Trustee Cavazos, to NIAA, and thank you, Ms. Sloan, who's back there, for your service and your leadership on this, this committee. Okay, very good.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. Thank you, colleagues, for your faith in reappointing me to another very, very fun 3-year term. And I wanted to, as President pointed out here, that we do have Ms. Pam Sloan in the audience. If you just do a little wave there, I know she's going to do something to me if I make her stand up or anything. But she is our very, very capable athletic director for CCSD. And I wanted to point out that she is someone that I have known since basic high school, and she is a member of not one, but 2 halls of fame that she's been inducted to. And she does an amazing job for Clark County School District. So I just wanted to point that out. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Trustee Cavazos. All right, moving on to item 4.01, this public comment on items not listed as action items on the agenda. Before I continue on this item, I would like to just remind members of the audience who would like to speak on this item and have not had a moment to complete their public speaker card to please do so now before I continue. It appears we have some individuals who signed up in advance. Autumn Tampa, which I believe is still not here, but I wanted to mention her name. Next will be, the next person up after Autumn, although she's not here. The next person will go is Monique Zephyrin. You'll let me know how to say that, please. Followed by James Bayless and Henry Thorns. Are any of these individuals present? Who's that? Oh, James Bayless, of course. Come on up. Of course, I'm sorry I missed you. But you come on down. Thank you, thank you.
Well, I figure it's good to, practice your reading so that way it's a fluent muscle memory. James Bayless, for the record, Dr. Jara, ladies of the board. So this packet that you guys are about to receive, it's mainly, I guess, for Luke, since he's the only one pretty much pertinent to what I've been dealing with. Within that package you'll get, Mr. Luke, you'll see that speaking, I guess, to Chief Black Eye, since I know he's watching in the other room, the arbitrary, where you're supposed to go to general counsel, as you, supposed to go to this board to get people in trouble for when they do something wrong to your kid. If you read in that package, you will see it's a civil/criminal proceeding. It's mentioning the wrongful arrest, where basically I was trying to have Brian Burrell, Daniel Ibarra, and ironically Dr. Jara's name sitting in there. And so if I remember, according to what Dr. Chief Black Eye said about the arbitrary, we were supposed to be having a long panel of meetings about that because, again, that's a criminal and civil proceeding.
Mr.
Wrongful
Bayless.
arrest and wrongful carbonation.
I know you're an expert in this area. Could you please help us address the entire board and not just one individual?
Well, okay.
Thank you.
Well,
Thank you.
you guys don't really have jurisdiction on this, so that's more of him. Just saying. But as far as Chief Black Eye's arbitrary, which we mentioned to our legislature, I did all that. Remember when I came October 28th of 21 when somebody was about to be terminated? That was prior to that. So that arbitrary that Chief Black Eye mentioned, that's why the question was asked, was for this packet. Would it be surprised to believe that that didn't happen in my case, but I did all the proper proceedings that said the list. I did everything he was saying. And one fun fact, if you read in the language of that, you'll hear everything that happened to Fremont about the situations. But one thing you'll notice is the front page of that paper got changed. There's only Valley on there, where it was supposed to be a Valley and Fremont. But they did keep Mr. Keaton's name on the paper, which was his IEP case manager for Fremont, but they took the school name off of that paper. And I have the other paper where it's still listed. So I don't know where that came from. And I got that over the weekend. That was from my beloved friends within my district. I never got my hands on that. That's actually a conversation between Bob Sweden, Jennifer Ferris, Daniel Ibarra, and a bunch of other situations. So I'm only coming up here before I go to federal court, before I even serve you people. I'm trying to give you people the benefit of the doubt to try to fix my son's situation before really bad things happen to a lot of people's careers. Because again, coming up here, and I honestly think...
Thank you, Mr. Bayless.
But can I say one more thing?
Your time is up.
Probably be a good idea.
Is Henry Thomas here? No? Okay, we're going to move on to yellow cards. Mackey, followed by Salaya Mackey. I just did it again. Followed by Ernest Mackey. Please state your name for the record. Welcome.
My name is Xander Mackey. My name is Xander Mackey. I attend Las Vegas High School, and I'm here to talk about how the schools tries to keep the parent uninvolved and uninformed about what is happening regarding the child in the school system. There are places regarding parents. There are actions and things that are supposed to be addressed to the parents about what takes place with their student before they make action and pull students out of class during their learning period and try to interrogate and intimidate the students by giving up information. They should first be contacting the parent, tell the parents what is going on before they bring any action in the kids. So, and then plus they be proceeding with disciplinary action without any contact for the kid's parent or anyone knowing. And so I have witnessed and I've heard from other students about how the school tries to suppress us from knowing from the parents, from speaking out and letting our parents know what is happening about our schools. This is a mental distress of harassment and an intimidation to all as victims, especially towards the African American students. I have come to determine why some students return to school and retaliate against the teachers, student faculty, and school faculty. And as I see here today, the school board has no one to represent the African culture. And my recommendation is to make a change, is to start here at the top in order to see change in the school district and to inform and involve the parents into what takes place with their child during school and for their safety and for their future. I'm addressing this to the school board and the trustee, Ms. Cavazos, who has no clue of what is going on in District Zone G. Thank you.
Okay. Salaya. Please state your name for the record, and please help us by addressing the entire board and not just one individual board member. Thank you.
My name is Celia Mackey. I attend Las Vegas High School. I'm a first-hand victim of what goes on between staff and students at Las Vegas High School, constantly being retaliated against on a daily basis and harassed because of false information distributed among staff. There was an incident, a fight that happened, and I was there when it happened. I got pulled out of class, period, missing instruction, and was told to identify students that were watching the fight, which I couldn't do because I didn't know the ones appointed to me. I was told to wait. I didn't know what was going on. As I was walking out the office, I was told I was being suspended for instigating the fight. The fight video was sent around and even got sent to staff, and in the video you can hear me and my friend clearly saying stop and break the fight up. I called my dad and he came up to the school on my behalf and they lifted my suspension because my dad made an appearance. It was an act of retaliation from staff members to get me removed from my sports and leadership programs. I know for a fact the school staff harasses me because of past issues with administrators and the school that my dad brings attention to, whether it's having multiple meetings with the principal or even coming here to speak out. Constant retaliation, harassment, false accusations, racist remarks towards students of color, backhanded racist remarks coming from coaches and staff, gossip among staff about students, personal animosity towards parents when they speak out, which turns into hatred for the student. All those things are being presented at Las Vegas High School, and I am a victim to all. All in all, I'm here to face this board of acknowledgement to make change in the school district and staff members of representation for the youth of African American students. This has been going on since last year, and no one on this board has reached out. Thank you.
Thank you. Ernest Mackey, followed by Carlana Kolseth and Jamie Tudinsky.
Good evening, board members. My name is Ernest Mackey. Those are my children who just spoke out, and there will be many more coming about. As I've spoken many times in front of y'all, and Mrs. Bosky still has a trustee in our district. I have been retaliated against one of your superintendents, lying to the staff, saying what I done. And I keep very thorough notes as well, saying that I hung up in her face, called me with an attitude already because what I was persistent on. And then I told her I didn't have the time at the time when she called me because it was late that evening, which she had a conference call set up at 10:30 that morning, which never took place, and fussing at me because she's telling me that was her notes to her secretary, but her secretary told me it was set up for me. And that's what the secretary told me that Mrs. Deanna had set up for us, which she still haven't reached back out to me to set up a schedule, nor Mr. Jar's office as well. This has been going on all this year, also last year, and no one has reached out. We are trying to contact, but instead they are trying to cover it up and turn it around against us. This is not the only situation that's going on at Las Vegas High School. You all need to look into it more. We're sitting back there doing nothing. And then when it's brought out and cases made, the superintendents are telling the staff at the school, hurry up and get a report written up when it should have been done months ago. They are stressing my kids, pulling them out of class almost every other day to do a report for them, which they should have done months ago. Putting people in place to retaliate against a child, like my son said. He see why kids are coming back to your school district and want to do physical harm to staff members and kids who provoke them for them. I've seen it. I've heard it out of some of your staff members' mouth. And one of your staff members, and I'm going to call his name, Mr. Ford, had told me that his higher beings told him to go after my daughter. And he wasn't even an administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Mackey. Carlana Colsa, Jamie Trudinsky, and Jacqueline Mitchell.
Good evening, Madam President, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Jara. My name is Carlana Colseth for the record. Earlier today, before this board meeting, myself and several colleagues in this school district had stood outside with our umbrellas. Not sure if you guys knew about that. I am a Nevada State Education Association Time for 20 ambassador. And what that means is we're looking for a clean 20 across the board. We are looking for all educators to be making 20% salary increase, a minimum of $20 an hour for our hourly wage employees, and 20 students in a classroom. And while that seems like a unmanageable accomplishment, currently right now our legislative session is sitting on over $3 billion in surplus of money. And I cannot for the life of me understand why this no-brainer move of this district not moving behind this movement has not happened. Washoe County School District Superintendent has stepped up and stated, we need time for 20 because it would push us towards finally looking towards optimal funding for education. Carson City School District Superintendent said the same thing also. So I'm just curious, you guys have lobbyists up there, you have people that go up there and talk. Sometimes you guys take turns going up there as well. I'm wondering why we're not hearing that Clark County School District wants to push this also, considering our CFO just pointed out we don't have money to make things happen. Superintendent Jara went up with the CFO 4 or 5 weeks ago and reported that, hey, if we do 10% increases, we're not going to make things happen. And if we do 15% increases, we have no money left. So why is this body not pushing for more? Because when I talk to legislators, When I talk to officials that are across the board, down in this district representing us up in Carson City, they don't hear Clark County wanting 20%. That boggles my mind. It doesn't take any money. I don't care who the organization is that had created the movement. This district cannot afford to sit on the sidelines and just wait for whatever's handed down. I need to see a little more action up here. All of you guys were elected to your position to represent the constituents. Your constituents are employees. We need to take care of the adults just as much as the students in our schools. This morning, I logged in to HCM, tapped on Taleo, saw over 1,300 vacancies, and we're not even in the summer months yet for next year. Get it together. It doesn't cost you a dime to stand behind this movement. We're tired of waiting. You're right, we don't want one-time bonuses anymore. We want a livable wage. Thank you.
Jamie Trudinsky.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Jamie Tedrinsky. And I feel like I could probably just say ditto everything that Carlana said because she said it very succinctly. But I just want to kind of share some of the stories of the people who are behind the movement, right? We have teachers, we have support staff, bus drivers, cafeteria workers, secretaries, the special ed assistants, people who are living in weeklies because the salary is not enough, people who are selling plasma to make it to the next paycheck. So we're talking about literal blood, sweat, and tears coming from some of the adults who keep this district running, right? And I've seen this struggle. My mom is a school bus driver in Pennsylvania, right? And she loves it, but it doesn't pay the bill, right? And we have people who should not have to rely on food banks and selling parts of their body, right? And hoping that their spouse's income is enough when they are the front line supporting our kids, right? Our bus drivers are up at 4 a.m. to get our bus routes ready to get our kids, right? Our cafeteria workers are sometimes the only people in our students' lives who are feeding them, right? We have students who, if they don't have an aide with them, they're not gonna get that free access to a quality education that every child deserves, right? And your teachers are gonna continue to leave because we're beginning to see our worth, and we're seeing that Clark County is not paying us our worth. Right, there is a statewide movement. We are so close to the bottom in funding for our teachers, but we're number 1 in class size. A couple years ago at Valley High School, I had a classroom of world history, 58 kids in a portable, 58. They didn't fit, right? I had kids sitting on the staircase outside, and then I got in trouble because that wasn't safe. You know what's not safe? Is having 58 kids in a portable. You know what I also didn't have? That was a CC class. I didn't have a CC teacher because we didn't have enough. So I was out of compliance with the fire marshal. I was out of compliance with our special ed students, right? I was out of compliance with my own sanity that year because we don't take care of the problems, and you wonder why teachers are leaving. You wonder why we don't have enough bus drivers, why we don't have enough custodians. My Key Club kids are cleaning our school right now. They're helping clean, with my kids learned how to use those fun little vacuum cleaners to help our custodians because we don't have enough, and my kids saw the need. My kids should be studying, not cleaning the classrooms, but we don't have the people, right? And if we don't fund Time for 20, if we don't make that work, if we don't respect our educators, we don't respect every support professional in our kids' lives, we are doing a disservice to our future. Thank you.
Jacqueline Mitchell.
Yes, good evening. Again, I'm Jacqueline Mitchell. I am a mother, grandmother. I have served over 50 years in public schools, and never have I seen the condition like it is now. You have, there are children that misbehave sometimes. There are teachers that misbehave sometimes. While they are good teachers and they are good children, it seems that you're turning the back on the problem with these two beautiful A students in the back. It is really sad. And how do we expect to change anything if we don't address it at the root? And the root is the children. Thank God these children have such a strong backing that they refuse to let their grades go down. They refuse to hook school. They refuse to just, they comply. They're very compliant young people. They're in all kinds of sports. But no, the young lady said, this is the first time this problem happened. No, baby. I went to a meeting at Chaparral 5 years plus ago when we had the same identical problem. We had the media there, we had the NAACP there, every organization, the same problem, the racial problem, the problem of teachers retaliating against children, the same thing. And it's over 5 years. So what is happening? Why are we still going through these things? Are those same people that are the group that did the study talking about the minority suppressors? Are they the ones that are running our schools? Are they the ones that are in our schools? What are the solutions? Who have the solutions to what's going on? Because these children should not suffer. We need to find a good attorney because there's no way that a child should be retaliated on. And yes, that is true because as a PTA president, as the chairperson of the legal PTA president legal system, I've seen it. And it's still happening. And the teachers are so sophisticated sometimes. Now you do have good teachers. They're so sophisticated, what they will do is rally their teachers or rally the adults to fight the children. What is that all about? Who in this room have guts enough to say it will stop now? Because it needs to stop. No child needs to go to school being bullied, harassed, etc.
Thank you, thank you. Austin, thank you, Jacqueline. Austin Real.
Hello, good evening. For the record, Austin Ray. I'm here in reference to AB 65 that was brought up on the Senate Committee for Education recently. The Superintendent of Public Instruction, Joan Ebert, they brought up that in reference to the start age of kindergarten, that there be a waiver issued to all of the kids who were previously enrolled in preschool. I've previously made a public comment at this forum. I've personally reached out to Ms. Bustamante as well as numerous other trustees and or senators, assembly, and I've gotten no feedback. This was on the 10th that this waiver was enacted and that grace was allowed for the hundreds, maybe thousands, including my child, that would potentially be able to graduate with a cohort. So I'm wondering, are you guys going to reach out to the parents who've been going through turmoil, stress, agonizing that their kid's gonna be left behind, and have to be preschool, as we're told by principals, regional superintendents, as well as trustees. So I'm here making a public comment about that, but ask that all the trustees reach out to those districts and maybe give some remedy to those parents and not look at it from a fiscal point of view and trying to save dollars or enact a full day through Title I of preschool or however the figures. But ultimately, my sweat equity is what's paying your for the schools, for your salaries, as well as anybody else who's paying taxes. I know some of you have business background. I also realize that the Board of Trustees, they have a fiduciary obligation that comes with being a trustee. I know it's a guild to be able to, have protection against the people that you know, are voted in by. But I just ask that give us parents some remedy, allow us to move on. You know, it's pretty disheartening that the only thing we care about is building stadiums and you know, spending numerous amounts of money and creating bonds off of our kids' QSIP numbers, trading them on the stock market. You know, that's where funds come from. Just so you guys know, that QSIP number, birth certificate, that's how the bonds created that provide funding through real property management. So appreciate you.
Thank you. That concludes public comment at this time. I'm going to move on to item 5.01, upcoming meeting of the Board of Trustees on Wednesday, June 7th at 4 p.m. This meeting will take place here in the boardroom. Okay, colleagues, going to move on to item 6, adjournment. I'm looking for a motion. Trustee Guzman.
Thank you, President Garcia Morales. I would like to move that we adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Trustee Guzman. Trustee Williams.
I second.
Thank you, Trustee Williams. Colleagues, we have a motion by Trustee Guzman and a second by Trustee Williams. Please cast your vote. Thank you, colleagues. The motion passes 7-0. The time is 6:42. Have a wonderful evening.